Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Alright, so this is going to be an interesting video. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit funny, but I think it's going to help you to understand something that will help you to get through life and to understand other people and yourself. The name of the song is Homestead by Punch Deck. The music will go down in about 2 minutes. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really hard for humans, meaning all, to have it's a hard grasp of. To have a good grasp on this concept. So what we're going to talk about is contrast. That's going to be a piece to help you understand the subject, and the subject is, why is it so hard to understand other people? Okay, so I'm going to bring up one piece of my spiritual awakening that lasted 6 months. Okay, so this is a really important piece. So every night when I went through this awakening, and I mean every night, now this is the first time in my life that it happened. So when I went through my spiritual awakening, I was 28 years old, and every night when I'd go to bed, it was class time. I would go into this other, I don't know what you call it a different space, but I was extremely conscious. Not like, when you go to sleep and you dream, sometimes you... Sorry, I cut it off on accident. Sometimes you dream, sometimes you don't. It was not like that. So here's what happened. So at the very, very last day, the last lesson, now this was actually this was a really emotional thing, because on the one hand I got really bored, not bored, but I was kind of tired, like I needed a break. Because every single night I would learn these overwhelming lessons of stuff that you couldn't learn from a book if you wanted to. I was learning stuff that I'd never even heard of, and at one point I took my girlfriend and we went to the local college, and we had to go to the science department and talk to a, what do they call them, an astronomist? Yeah. And it had to do with this planetary system that came into my mind, and I was like, wow, like what? And I just knew that's what it was, and we went there like, oh yeah. So that's another story. I don't want to get that involved here, but there was stuff like that I'd never heard of in my life, and all of a sudden I had knowledge, had graphs and charts, and I'd draw them down, and I actually went there, showed them like, oh yeah, it's the planetary system Sirius. And they go to the library, ask the librarian, and the chart I drawn out, what happened was, okay, I'll give you this bit. So they said, go to the library, and we did. And right when we got to the door, it was a narrow door. It wasn't a very wide door. One of the younger librarians just passed by, and she goes, can I help you? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm looking for a book on the planetary system Sirius. And she looks at me, she goes, are you joking? I'm like, no, why? She goes, I just put that book away. That's the first time I've ever seen that word in my life. She goes, I know exactly where that book's at. So she walked us over there, and we were all kind of tripping at the same time, me and my girlfriend, this librarian. So she walked us down the aisle, she pulls the book out, and she hands it to me, and she goes, what's this about? And I said, I'm going through this, what I call, because no one ever told me what it was. I never heard of it. So, but that's part of it. You just know what it is. And I said, I'm going through this spiritual awakening now. This is before I ever met a monk or did any of that stuff at all. And so she goes, really? I go, yeah. I told her about the dream and how I did. And then I pulled out the drawing. I pulled out these double pieces of paper that I had put together as a spiral note book. No, it was my journal. And I had all these circles drawn from left to right. And she looks at me, and she hands me the book. And I just had to realize this, like, oh my God. I go, when I open this book, I'm going to open it randomly in the middle. It's going to be that exact picture that I drew last night. So I flipped open the book. I put my fingers in, boom, popped it open, boom, it was the exact same picture. And she looks at me, she goes, what's going on? I go, I do not know how to explain this to you. So, we read it and we had to talk about it, but it kind of gives you an idea. It was a really, really interesting experience. And that was not the only thing I did. There's a lot more to it, which I've shared in the past. Probably a year or more ago I've shared this stuff. Okay, so I went to bed one night and I fell asleep, and I don't know, within an hour, maybe less, woke up to class time, and okay, class time again. And I'm staring, and there's just nothing. It's just blank, like nothing, like no space, no sky, no stars, just blank. And I'm like, okay. But you gotta understand, there's a certain sense of like, this is what God was like. Yeah, this is what I want you to see, to know, to experience. And I'm like, and I'm thinking like, but there's not, like, literally nothingness. It was the void that they talk about in the book of Genesis. But at the time, I didn't make that connection. It took me many years later to go, oh, that's what the book of Genesis is talking about. So it went for a long time, and I'm kind of like, okay, like, when's class going to start? But I knew that this had something to do with it. So eventually there was this, it was kind of like a noise, like almost like a chalkboard, and it would, and I was like, what's that? And it was a rectangle with kind of like a white color on nothingness, on darkness, nothingness. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, it meant nothing. Now, by the way, the other lessons were symbolic, but they were not this vague. Usually there's some kind of understanding that came with each piece. But I had to understand this by having this experience of absolute nothingness. And I'm looking at this rectangle that eventually came along, and I was like, well, what is that? And I'm like, it's a rectangle, okay. And I was like, oh, it's the beginning and the ending. So the left was the beginning, the right was the ending, and I go, the alpha, the omega, the beginning and the end, right? The ending, or the beginning and the end. I'm looking at this, going, what the hell is this? And it was really weird. I'm like, because it was like a two-dimensional thing, and I kind of figured that out. I'm like, okay, and like, I don't get it. And then there was little streaks of white that went into it. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, oh, that's our spirits, or those are angels. Like, okay. And it just let me sit there with this for another half an hour or more. And I'm like, okay, like what? Like, okay, what is it? And all of a sudden, in the lower left-hand corner, there's just a little tiny little spark. Now, what this is about is not the full teaching, but I will give you the full teaching. What it's about, I'm going to give you right now, is contrast. That little spark was a spark of negativity. Now, what you have to understand is, when I was in the nothingness, even before the drawing of the rectangle, that nothingness represented absolute purity, meaning positive, all positive electrons, all positive everything. There was no negative at all. And that's why there was nothingness. So when there's nothingness, then there's nothingness. But it's from this nothingness, when you meditate and get to that space of absolute void nothingness, that's when you get to create whatever you want in this 3D world. I mean, it will manifest. So as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that little spark, and when it was coming, I'm like, oh, that's negativity, and I knew it, like, but it only just did one negativity in the lower left-hand corner, and then all the way across from lower left to all the way up and to the right, it filled the entire rectangle with contrast, with colors, with flavors, with sounds, with feelings, with emotions, with sights, with just everything, And I realized, like, oh, that's the three-dimensional world where you can see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. And that is all created by contrast. Without contrast, you can't have anything. There's no existence. But the funny thing is, and I think it was in the Bible, I'm trying to blank right now. I don't want to look it up because I want to get this video out. Is angels are there, but they don't even know that they exist because they're in absolute purity, positive. See, when you have all positives and no negatives, you there's no contrast, and you don't know if anything exists because there's no control, there's no contrast. Like a guitar string, in order for it to make any noise, there has to be a vibration, and the vibration comes from a resistance, which essentially and ultimately is contrast. So the ultimate lesson of this whole experience, and that's not what the lesson of this video is about, but was that life is a gift that was meant to be enjoyed. This whole 3D experience was meant to be about sounds and flavors and music and artwork and beauty and visual things like colors and sun and lights and emotions and just everything, flavors and smells, and just experiencing life to the fullest. That's it. So all those people telling you that it's about punishment and pain and sacrifice and you're gonna go to hell, oh, they are so they completely missed the entire boat. Life is literally a gift. All that other bullshit is man-made, and it was made up by man, actually made up by narcissists to destroy your experience because they're jealous of you. And the reason why they're jealous is because they are stuck and they can't pop out of it. Because the right brain is the brain of flexibility. It's the brain of shifting, of moving, of changing, of seeing things and experiencing things and hearing things from different perspectives. Now, here's the point of this video. Human beings are so radically different that we couldn't possibly imagine how to explain this, what we're not. So, okay, I've said this in the past. So in other words, now this video really is about contrast and shifting to the complete 180 degrees opposite end of the spectrum, just way over there, okay? So one of the things we learned in NLP is flexibility is the mother of skill, the mother of power. How do you say that? Flexibility is the mother of power. So in other words, if you don't have the ability to see something from the complete opposite, not like 1% or 0.5%, because that's the point with most people. They're stuck on like 1 or 2 degrees, and that's their full movement. It's like the volume of your stereo going from 5 to 6, and that's it. Like, that is so limited. And that's all you know. So when somebody walks in the room and says, "Hey man, I walked on water today," and you're like, "Oh, what a weirdo." Well, how do you know? How do you know they're weird? Or what? Maybe go watch them. Go see if they can do it. You know, like at least have an open mind to find out. But some people won't even do that. That's how closed-minded they are. All right, so I'm going to cut to it. So here's the thing. Empaths, our problem, and I've said it in the video, but this isn't really what the video is about, but it's an example of what I'm talking about, is our problem that I've pointed out in many videos is we think that everyone is a good person like us. And that's what I'm talking about. We, all of us, every person thinks that other people are like them. And then if they act inconsistent with who they are, they're like, not them, but like who you, okay, let's say you. So you're like, okay, well, this is who I am. This is essentially the way most people are. Okay, so what do empaths do? We think that everyone comes into a meeting or meeting a new person with good intentions. One of the biggest mind-blowing experiences that I had was with a narcissist when I realized for the first time in my life, like, wait a minute, they came into this like meeting with me with the intention to destroy me from the very first day they saw me. Now here's the deal. My whole life people have said like, hey Michael, there's bad people out there. There's people that will just kill you for no reason. There's people that will play mind games. And I'm like, why would they do that? Because in my mind, I wouldn't do that. I had therapists constantly tell me like, Michael, that's not love, or that's not this. And I heard it. I saw it in movies. I've had teachers and therapists and friends, parents pull me aside like, Michael, you're like, you need to understand something. Like, not everyone's nice like you. And that's what a lot of you on this channel used to be like. You used to be, you used to give these people second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. And after you went through that huge hurt and awakening, you're like, oh, screw that. Because here's the other thing is when I realized, like, wait a minute, they set me up on purpose. Like, they planned this. They weren't just having a bad day, or they misunderstood something that I said to them, and they got mad at me and they took it out on me, and then later realized, like, oh, I made a mistake. You know, I thought you said this when you didn't say, you know. No, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. They just flat out planned this stuff for whatever psychotic reason. So the point of this video is this: a lot of you got shocked and you got hurt and you were just devastated, and you were still confused, like you were like, why did they do that? And which means you still are going, and I think a lot of you passed this, but you're still, if you know, when you were at that point, even I was, when you're like, why would they do that? Even when you realized they did it on purpose, you almost still couldn't grasp the concept that yes, they did it on purpose. Because your brain is like, well, I wouldn't do that. So you get stuck in this limbo of like, yeah, you know, like, man, I need to stay away from this person. But at the same time, you're still going, I don't understand. Like, what did I do? You didn't do anything. Now watch this. I'm going to give you a real life example. Because I think it will help you to finally understand not everybody's like you and people are radically different. Alright, now I have told the story once or twice in the past, so it's been a long time. Okay, so I met a girl. She lived, I believe it was in Oakland or nearby Oakland. I think it actually was in Oakland, but it was a nice part. Or actually, it might have been Berkeley. I'm not actually 100% sure. What, like, because Berkeley and Oakland like kind of gel right together. So anyways, so I drove down. She wanted to take me out to dinner, really nice dinner. She took me out to a really nice restaurant. It was on her. And when we got in there, she started to argue. So we ordered our food, and she's arguing, and I'm like, geez, like, I got to get out of this. Like, I can't stand this. So we're waiting for the food, and she's just like really getting loud. So a waitress comes over. Our waitress says, hey, you know, the manager's asked me to ask you to quiet down. And the girl looks at her. Oh, okay. Okay, now let me make the setting a little more. This was a really nice restaurant. I mean, this is like where dignitaries went, political people, mayors, you know, people like that. Like, this was a really, really expensive restaurant. And so she was just continuing to be loud. They brought our food over, you know, we started eating, and I could say, wow, this is really delicious. She would freaking argue. So the waitress came over one more time and says, hey, look, you know, you're disturbing the other patrons. Can you please quiet it down? And I looked at her and first she goes, like, what's their problem? And I'm looking at her like, what the hell? Now, she had her master's degree. She was very political, and she worked at the state capitol for the governor. And her family was very well educated, very well off, and were all very, very political people. So, for some reason, she just went right back at it. Now, she just would argue, and she got really loud. And I said, look, I'm about to walk out. She goes, why? And I looked at her like, are we in two different universes here? So the manager comes over and says, look, if I have to come over one more time, we are going to kick you out of the restaurant. Will you please quiet down? And at this point, all the other people in the other tables are just went stone cold quiet, and everyone was staring. And I told her, go look around. Everyone's pissed off at you. She goes, oh, okay. She literally, and not only that, but she literally said, she goes, I don't understand what everyone's staring at us for. Like, what did we do wrong? I go, we, not we, you. So the waitress came over and brought us our bill, thank God. And they did rush us out of there on purpose. And I was like, and the girl goes, oh, no, I'm not done. I go, yeah, I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're done. Yeah, you can get us some boxes, or I don't remember how we got. I think we might have just got up and left because I wanted to get the hell out. So I drive her back, and I purposely didn't get out of the car, didn't open a door, and I pulled up to the curbs. All right, see you later, bye. And she goes, and I'm like, oh no. She goes, well, oh, aren't you going to come in? I was like, no, I don't think I am. I think, I've got a 30-minute drive. I think I'm going to head on home. This was absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the number one worst date I had ever been on in my freaking life. So she insists, and I mean insists, and I said, look, I really don't want to come in. I really do want to go home. She goes, just come in for one drink. I said, okay, I'm going to tell you something right now. I'm going to go in for one drink, and then I'm going to leave, and I'm not going to argue about it. She goes, okay, fine. Like, kind of like, what's wrong with this guy? So I went in, we talked for about 7 minutes or so, and I go, all right, I gotta go. But she goes, okay, like she was really upset and didn't, like, you could see like she was confused. Now I've kind of talked fast to get through the story, but it was an argumentative nightmare from frickin' hell. But I learned something. All right, so I wake up the next morning, and she has already left a voice message like at 7 o'clock. I'm like, oh, that was the best date in the world. I'm so glad to meet you, blah, 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 blah. Call me back. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, she just didn't get it. She couldn't. And to be honest with you, I didn't get that she didn't get it at all, and that blew my mind. So in all sincerity, not only was she lost as to what happened, I was completely lost as to how does she not realize I don't ever want to talk to her again. There's a cute ending to this story, and it's going to shock you. Alright, so I did not return her call. Later in the day when I got back after, 5 or 6 or something like that, I got 2 more messages from her, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I just deleted them, and I figured, oh, she'll catch on. She left me 2 or 3 messages every freaking day saying, call me back. That was the best date I ever had. She literally said that. She goes, that was the best date I've ever had in my life. Now, if you've heard me in the past, I hate to argue, but I am damn good at it. And the way she kept forcing the issues at the dinner table was I had to. I didn't have a choice. She said, oh, no. I don't know. I'm not going to try to break that down. So I kept beating her in all of her arguments. I got to a point where I did not give a rat's butt. I was like, no, I'm not going to let this young woman push me around. This is no. And I just beat her, and I did not give a shit because I was like, I can't wait till she says, well, let's just leave then. But she never did. So for an entire week, she left a message every day. So for the last 3 days, it was 1 message a day, maybe 4 days. So it stopped for 2 days, and I'm thinking, oh, well, it's over, so I can answer my phone now, because the whole time I had the ringer off. Now, this is before cell phones, okay? So one day, I'm there in the kitchen, and my phone rings. I go, hello, it's Mike, and she goes, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, no. So to cut to the chase, she eventually goes, like, why don't you, because I was really quiet. I was like, oh, I'm fine. I was like, every answer, because I'm fine, I'm good. Like, that was it. I was cold, cut to the point. And she goes, is there something wrong? And I'm like, what? She goes, did I do something wrong? And I'm like, are you joking me? She's like, no, why? And I don't remember how we got around to it or when she said it, but she said, that was the best date of my life. And I said, are you joking? She's, no, why? I go, that was the worst date I've ever been on in my entire freaking life, and I'm never going out with you again. She goes, I don't understand. What happened? So I brought up how loud she was, how she was yelling at me, and how many times the waitress and the manager had to come up and threaten to kick us out of the restaurant, how all the patrons were staring at us. They were freaking pissed off. They were trying to have a nice quiet evening at a nice expensive, blah, blah, blah restaurant. And she's like, were they really mad at us? I'm like, And I like, yes! I go, do you not understand? They weren't just going to kick you out for that day. They were going to kick you out for life. She goes, you think they were that upset? I'm like, oh my God. I was screaming this out. I mean, I was like at the top of my lungs, like, yes! And I was cussing using the F word. She goes, I don't understand why. And now at this point, I'm thinking, this girl works up at the governor's office in Sacramento, and she showed me her credentials, so she was the real deal. But I was just like, I just couldn't understand. So because I yelled so loud and I used the F word a lot, she goes, so you're really mad? And I'm thinking, oh my God, yes. She goes, but why? Wasn't that like the best date ever? I'm like, why? And I go, why do you think that was a good date? She goes, because we argued so passionately. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I told her how I effing hate arguing. I don't like to argue. She goes, yeah, but you said you were on the argument debate team. And I said, and I also told you I hated it. And she goes, I thought you were joking. Houston, we have a problem. So she finally started realizing, like, this guy, like, she's like, you're not joking. I'm like, no, I'm not joking. I hate to argue. She goes, but why? I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't remember how she got around to it, but she goes, in my family, Michael, we argue all the time, especially at the dinner table. I was like, oh, I go, I'm so sorry to hear that. She goes, why? And then I said, that must have been a horrible experience to have to argue and defend yourself at every single meal when you sat down with your family. And she's like, what are you talking about? That's not a bad thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? So she goes, in my family, Michael, when someone argues with you, the louder they get, the more they love you. And she said, that's how you know how much someone cares about you. I was like, what? So I explained to her, no, not to me. That means you don't care about someone at all. And she's like, no, Michael, that's not true. So I understood where she was coming from, because Tony Robbins shared a story about his marriage. And he said, I don't know if it's about a year or 2 years into the marriage, whatever it was, he said him and his wife Becky started to argue intensely like that, and he got up and walked out of the room, and she blew up at him and chased him, and she said, when you walk out of the room when you're with an argument with someone, that means you don't love them. And he goes, what? She goes, in my family, the way you know someone loves you is if they stay in the argument until you talk it out and you argue. So it was a very similar thing. Like, the more you intensely you argue, the more you care about someone's opinion. And Tony said, well, in my family, when you get into a heated argument like that, you walk out of the room because you care about someone. You want, cooler heads to prevail. You want to cool down and then come sit down with a calmer, clearer mind. So as this girl's telling me all of this, I'm like, oh. And then we ended up getting married. No, I'm just kidding about the part. We definitely did not get married. So she really liked me because I was yelling. I actually was pretty much yelling at the point, because at a point, I'm like, we've been warned 3 times and this girl's still getting loud. So I started yelling back. and in her eyes, that like triggered a love button for her. Like, this is family. And to me, she triggered my battle trigger, and this is my enemy. So she had a real hard time believing that I didn't want to go on another date with her, and I'm not kidding. She goes, are you being serious? I go, yes. I go, honestly, we are not a match. We are a match made in hell. This is not going to work. She goes, I think it will, though. So that's a lesson in contrast. I got to see something from a complete opposite perspective, and that's something that Narcissist did to us. Now, what does this do? It broadens your range, like, massively. Like, instead of from, like, Napa, California to San Francisco, which is about a 50-minute drive, it's more like Napa, California to Ripon, Wisconsin, which is more than halfway across the country. Like you have a broad perspective and everything in between. Now we actually drove to Wisconsin when we moved there, and we drove back a couple times. So we had all these images in our mind of all these different lands, Colorado, the hills, the mountains. It was just an amazing thing. And what I'm trying to say is now you have a much fuller range of possibilities. And this is what can help you in dealing with a narcissist. It can make your brain go, oh, I get it. Like this person literally never does anything without lying, manipulating, cheating, stealing, without trying to gaslight you and rip your heart and soul out. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, so this person isn't like me. So here's another part. So for those of us who are left and right brain, we have this thing called reasoning. And quite a few of you over the last 2 years have called me for coaching sessions, and you would say, well, I don't understand, why won't they reason with you? You know, every time I tried to reason with my husband or my boyfriend or whatever it was, they were talking to me, I would be like, yeah, you don't understand that doesn't exist in their brain. Like, that's not accessible to them. Because they're using the predator brain, and the predator brain is all about kill or be killed. That's it. That's the way they think. Do or die, win or lose, either or, and that's it. They're limited to either or. Either I win or you lose, even when you're on the same team. Now that's a concept that a lot of us have a hard time, like, wait, why would that guy try to destroy me? We're on the same team. We're in a relationship, or we're literally on the same business team or football team. Because that's the way they look at everything. They see everything as a win or lose situation, is a kill or be killed situation. Everything to them is a competition. Even when you try to say, like, wait, we're on the same team, they think that you're trying to get over on them, because that's the way they see it. So just as much as we had a hard time understanding that they weren't empathic, that they didn't see it from other people's perspective, which is what we massively do, is they look at you in the sense of who they are. They hurt people. They attack people, they manipulate people, they use people, they set people up. So they assume, well, so do you. So when you bought them that birthday gift out of your heart and your soul, they took it as, oh, okay, I get it. So they're trying to set me up somehow. And right away, they're already thinking of how they're going to hurt you, how they're going to get revenge on you. And I remember I literally went back to this person. I go, it's just a fucking gift. It's not a setup. It's not a manipulation. Like, what the fuck? It's like you can, and even right there, I remember this person looking like, oh, okay, like they're looking at me like, yeah, this is part of the manipulation too. And I'm like, there is no manipulation, but in their mind, everything is a game, everything is a kill or be killed, everything is a competition, everything is win or lose, everyone is trying to get over on everyone, and that's the way they see the world. These are very, very limited people. You have a broader range of experiences, a broader perspective, a broader everything. You have a lot more options. You're not stuck on 1 degree. You might go from 37 degree all the way to 117 degree, or maybe even more. But even if you only have 30 degrees, from 30 degrees to 60, you still have a much broader range than they do. They cannot conceive the possibility of being in a relationship with someone who actually cares about them, is looking out for them, and is on their side. Alright, have you ever heard a thief say, oh, everyone does it? Or, when they break into your car and steal something, like, well, it's your fault, you should have known better. Like, what do you mean I should have known better? What are you talking about? Because thieves think the way a thief thinks. Like, well, people are going to break in your car if they see something. Like, well, I wouldn't do that. And they're like, yeah, you would. Like, no, I wouldn't. I'm not like that. But you couldn't convince them of that in a million years. Same thing with people who do drugs. Oh, well, everyone does them. No, not everyone does them. So humans, not just empaths, but humans see everyone the way that they are, and they project, well, this is the way I am, well, so are they. No, they're not. So when you get to know someone, you should not look at them in the sense of, oh, this is the way we think, this is the way we believe, or what we know. Do not do that, because what you're going to do is you're going to paint a picture of who you think this person is, and when they do not hold true to that image, thought, values, rules, etc., that little box of information, you're going to get really pissed off at them. So it was just like that young lady at the dinner table arguing and fighting. Like, she just was like, oh, he's just like me, and made this assumption that everyone loves to argue, and that's how you know someone truly cares about you. Do not do that. No, people are radically different. The protection part is this. The reason why you got so wrapped up with a narcissist, probably many narcissists in your life, is because your brain couldn't even conceive of the concept that this person just love bombed me to set me up to devalue the shit out of me for the rest of my life and destroy me, because that's a concept that has never crossed your mind. And instead what you did is you said, well, and this is another empathic thing that we do, like, well, I'll just keep loving them, I'll keep being nice, and I'll show them that I'm on their side. They'll realize, like, hey, like, this person really cares about me, and then they're going to be nice to me. No. I remember when I went through my awakening, and I called my mom over and asked her why she was so mean to me, why she beat me so much. And I said I thought I was a good kid. I thought I stayed out of trouble, never had the cops knock on the door, got good grades, I worked hard in school and sports, etc. And she goes, you did, and I hated it. Now I'm crying at this point, and I said, I don't understand. I thought I was nice. Like, was I cocky and I didn't realize it? Or like didn't remember? She goes, no. She was on top of it. You were nice. Like it was a bad thing. And I was like, wait. And I literally said, I go, wait, that pissed you off? She goes, I hated it. My brain literally couldn't understand that. It's like, well, she must have meant something else. And because of that, I went through more abuse until I finally moved away. I didn't understand why she was like that. It didn't make sense to me. Even my little sister, I went to her the next day and she flat out told me, she goes, like, you don't get it. We hate you. And she said the same thing. She goes, because you're nice, because you're honest, because you're a good person. She goes, we can't stand you. My brain, I couldn't understand it because I couldn't conceive the possibility of somebody hating someone because they were a good person to them. That was just the weirdest. Now that I understand narcissist, oh, I get it. So now when I look at people, I'm just kind of waiting for anything. And I listen, and you know that phrase that they say, like, if they tell you, when they tell you who they are, believe them. That's what this is talking about. Number one, do not believe, think, or assume that anybody is like you in any area of life at all. Number two, approach them with a complete open book and learn and find out who they are. And if they tell you something vicious, mean, cruel, or sick, or confusing, believe them. And pay attention to what they physically and actually do. Actions speak louder than words. If they say they're going to be there and they don't, and they say they're going to be there and they don't, that's who they are. They don't follow through. They don't show up. They're a liar. Period. That's who they are. See them for who they are. Not who you want them to be. If they're mean to you, if they like to argue and you don't, there's nothing wrong with people arguing. If that's their thing, so be it. Do it with each other. But the point being is, if they do something, if they smoke cigarettes, don't sit there and go, oh, I'm going to talk them out of it. No, that's who they are. I hope you got something out of this video. Hey, this is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. If you like this video, please click subscribe, click the like button, go ahead and make a comment. And remember, there's a PayPal donation link right there in the description box. If you want to make a donation, I'd greatly appreciate it. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.